The expectations get massive. You do have to figure out, how do you use every dollar 10 times more efficiently than JP Morgan would, than Charles Schwab would. It's like a filtering of going from a good high school athlete to then you go play college D1, so then you go play pros, and then pros, there's still like the all-stars.
Tonight, I've brought together 5 incredible CEOs here at Shaw's Crab House to sit down, share stories, and open up in a way we don't usually get to see. This is a roundtable, a chance for a real discussion about life, leadership, and the twists and turns that come with being a CEO. I'm William Salvi, and this is the CEO Roundtable, brought to you by Wintrust. The 5 CEOs that we are featuring are Sean Riley of Dude Wipes, Brian Barnes of M1, Evan Wray of Mavely, Kristin Olszewski of Nomadica Wines, and Erica Beth Levin of Globowl. I'm excited to share this with you and enjoy the discussion. All right, well, it's so good to have you guys here. I'm gonna start it off, let's get right into it. First question's gonna go to Sean. I want the definition of founder and then the definition of CEO in your eyes.
Right, definition of founder I feel like is you're just doing anything to survive. So like when the kids are talking about founder mode these days, I feel like that's just like grinding, figuring out what's working, throwing stuff out there. And CEO is a more mature, okay, now there's an actual business and there's people to lead and there's processes to develop kind of deal. So you've heard my spiel, the Jordan to Jackson. So, you're Michael Jordan.
Give it to us again.
Yeah,
I haven't heard this.
You're Michael Jordan in the beginning, like you're taking the shots, you're on the court, you got to make all the plays, it's very intense. And then as things progress, you're Phil Jackson, you're more zen, you're trying to like lead the other people, take less of the shots, you're off the court now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's founder to CEO to me, you got to pull yourself out a little bit and just be more of like a leader, which can be tough to do because, as a player, you still want to play a lot, but it's not best for the company at a certain point for you to be doing all that stuff. So I don't know. It takes an evolution. It doesn't happen overnight.
In that vein, have any of you experienced any challenges with that transition?
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah. I think that's like the hardest transition to make. I mean, I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
So having to step back and I have a really amazing team, but there was a point where I had to be like, I'm micromanaging my team and I hired them because they're better than I am at these things, and I need to just let them run.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think I would assume that at some form or fashion, all of us are control freaks at this table. Otherwise, we wouldn't be have started something. But yeah, no, I think at a certain point, I like the Jordan to Phil analogy. Is I think that a founder can at a certain point in business become a bottleneck, right? Because like you were saying, if you have to be in every decision and control everything, then the business is only going to ever grow as much as like my capacity or our capacity if we were always a bottleneck, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a huge learning lesson, at least for me. And it's it's definitely like the next stage of evolution in putting trusting your team out there, and then being okay if it doesn't work out, right? And if something messes up, and not like going back into the founder side of things too fast. So
the pace at which you need to change is massive because founders, team of 1, team of 2, 3, and then the company, whether it's headcount, whether it's size of company, whether it's number of customers, it's just changing so rapidly. And the leader, you need to be a different leader at every stage. And so you run the risk of getting ahead of yourself, falling behind. You never are perfectly the right leader for the right size at the right time. And so it's this constant evolution that you have to make.
Yeah.
I feel hopeful knowing we can get to the Zen point. You said Michael Jordan, and then you get to the Zen point eventually. I don't know when that's going to happen, but also the question I think a lot of founders don't necessarily ask themselves is, am I the right CEO? And for how long, because just because you're a founder doesn't mean you're an exceptional CEO either. So it's kind of also knowing where your strong suit is. Is that our strong suit? Like, should I go into that or should I take a different role?
Yeah.
Right.
Do all of you feel like you're the right person when the business gets large enough to be the CEO?
Yes.
Yes.
So the funny thing with that is there's an
don't know,
an
actually.
element of like, are you the right person? And then there's for sure like an element of ego that probably everyone has.
Well,
to a
it's your
certain
baby
sense,
too.
right?
It's
Yeah.
your, it should be,
Yeah.
you all are founders, so you want to make sure that it's going in the direction that you ultimately
Yeah.
set out for it.
Well, I think what you were hitting on, Brian, is like also the speed of change and the rapidness of change, especially like all of us are in high growth businesses, and so most businesses that maybe take 5-10 years to go through a growth curve, a lot of us are doing it in like 12 to 18 months. So then you kind of accelerate that as like, okay, who's the leader over the next 5 to 10 years? Well, it either needs to be one of us, or like we need to change our teams out in 12 months, right? It's like really, really fast. It's happening really fast. So a lot of learnings.
Did any of you have, scratch that, Evan, I meant to direct that towards you. Did you have any formidable experience in your life that made you want to become a CEO and or an entrepreneur?
Yes. So for me, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was an architect in Dayton, Ohio. So he did like historical renovation. And I also think entrepreneurship, I'll come back to that question. Entrepreneurship is very creative. It's a bit of a creative endeavor, right? I think a lot of people think, oh, a business, like you're very organized and driven and everything. It actually is a creative endeavor for entrepreneurship. And so like he was an architect. He was a historical renovation architect, which is kind of creative, if you will. So I saw that firsthand. I kind of grew up in that, and I like went to work with him and everything. So that was definitely like a big thing for me. And then I think so. He actually passed away when I was 19, which then kind of slingshotted my desire into I want to kind of replicate that, but do it in my own way. So like for me, that was a huge formative thing.
And you started a business in college.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that was a big formative thing. And then just being able to say like, okay, this is how you can have an impact, or this is how you can like affect people's lives positively, is hiring and giving them jobs and building something that's meaningful to people over time. So that was mine.
Sean, you have a different path because your story, if you could retell it for the group, is different than that. I mean, you were in college. Can you walk us through your story and how you became the CEO?
Well, it's a chief executive dude story.
So got to
different,
run with it, man.
But I wouldn't say I was trying to become a CEO. I was just scrapping along in my apartment after college with no experience in any of this stuff, and I wanted to be creating something and selling something. So it was really just that like entrepreneurial itch. How do you get started? How do you get it going? That was the first goal. The first goal was to make $100,000, and there really is no CEO when you're making $100,000. There's just one guy trying to sell some boxes and stuff. So like, it evolves, but like we were just like one thing at a time. How do we have one job? Then how do we hire another co-founder and have a second job? And then it evolves into like, what does a CEO look like?
Sean's LinkedIn says on his college, it says drank 1,000 beers on his, like for his major.
For your experience.
Yeah, I love it.
I told you, your
about what
social
I
game
learned.
is strong.
Social game is
very
strong. Erica,
1,000,000 beers.
unless
Yeah,
did you say
Updated.
more than
Yeah,
1,000?
you're like, don't undersell me. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
right.
Don't do that.
One
Yeah.
semester.
Erica,
Yes,
what was surprising to you? Because this is not your first business.
correct, yeah.
So what is surprising to you as a CEO now that you wish you knew when you were younger?
I mean, that's a great question. I feel very lucky to be doing this business that I'm doing now at this time, because I made a lot of mistakes, in the past.
Yeah.
And so this is the company I feel like I was kind of put here to do. And so I'm glad I made those mistakes in the past. I think, ego can get in the way. There's all these mistakes, right? And you need to kind of remove that and think of things kind of from higher up, right? Like, it's hard. I'm trying to like say this in a way that sounds somewhat intelligent, but having done it before, like I said, gives me the tools I need, at this stage of the game. I went back though, and I said, you know what? I'm not doing. I want to foundationally understand what I'm doing again. even though I've already done this twice. And so I actually went back and I did these accelerator programs. And I said, I really need to fundamentally understand this business. Like, I need to build a financial model from the ground up. I need to do all these things that I think sometimes get forgotten. And they're really, really important and foundational in what you're building. And so I went back and I did Techstars. I went through the Target Accelerator because I have a CPG company, so Target makes sense for us. And really wanted to kind of go back to the learnings of it. I didn't study entrepreneurship in school. I'm like an accidental entrepreneur, and so I thought it was really important kind of going into this new company to not make those mistakes again, use what I learned, and then even learn more. So
I'm curious, Erica, on like going back to founder mode, you know, because
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet, and it's like an interesting question. Oh, could you go back to like having nothing and building it from the ground up once you have a platform and like resources and all of that? And it sounds like you've done that before. So like, what is that like going back?
don't get me wrong,
over?
I did not want to do another company.
Yeah.
I will make that like so clear. And I said I wouldn't. I wanted more stability, and I just wanted to kind of chill a little bit and enjoy my family and my kids.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, if I'm called to do something, like it has to be something that I like cannot ignore, that I have to do. And so yeah, it's been interesting kind of going back to founder mode. I'm like 17 years older than I was the first time around. Right. So like I was 24 the first time around. I knew absolutely nothing. And that's great because it allowed me to make all those mistakes. This time there's a lot more at risk. So that's scary, right? You're like, okay, I'm not going to take a salary. I have a mortgage and 2 kids now. Like there's a lot of things different the older you get. So it's been honestly quite scary. It was a fear that my husband and I both had. But he agreed that this is the company that I should be doing. He's like, you have to. I get it. You have to. And so here we are.
It's interesting on what you just said in terms of like the first company, you didn't know what you didn't know.
Correct.
Right. I don't know if you were married or not, but you probably didn't have kids and a mortgage.
Right.
It's like almost the risks were less to some extent.
There was it was like I had nothing to lose.
Didn't know
Worst comes to worst, I go get another
100%,
job until I figure out what comes next. You know?
Right. Yeah.
I think that's like just a general attitude that I think a lot of like new, I guess especially like students in school or coming out of school and everything is like, I guess I'm biased, but I think it sounds like you did the same thing right out of school. And I don't know everyone else's founding story, right? If there's early right after school or not, but like that's the lowest risk time to just go for something.
Yeah.
And you're probably on the like most cutting edge of at least like social trends or digital trends, right?
You're hip.
Yeah.
You're hip. You're in.
You're still cool.
I do think people like massively miscalculate risk when they're young because the worst you can do is fail nothing, and you're pretty close to that anyway from the get-go, and then sort of like the upside is unlimited, and so to your point, like the person who would go start anything is an employable person, and even like them trying something and failing is probably advancing their career more than just doing like the typical corporate track. So I do feel like more people earlier on should be very, very risk tolerant and swinging for the fences and striking out a handful of times.
100%. Like so, I did one business before Mavely, a company called Swift, and I went to work. We started it in college. It was an emoji business, and I went to work for a big corporation. I lasted like 3 months, and then it wasn't for me. But I remember calling my mom and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna quit. And I'm going to go do this business full time." And she was supportive, but it was also like scary and for her. And then my exact words to her were, worst case scenario, this thing goes to zero in 18 months and I just go back to the same company at a higher level, right? So it's like, from your point, like the risk reward or the risk tolerance is like, I think it's the highest when you're younger. Yeah.
You also learn by doing. So, having done my first company so young and not really knowing at all what I was doing, I learned it that way. And people would ask, did you go to business school or how did you get to start? No, but I might as well, like I learned what I would have learned in business school by actually doing it versus reading it in a book or hearing it from a professor. And I just think hands-on learning is so important.
Do you guys think that being an expert in the industry and then iterating on it is more of an advantage, or like coming in and not knowing what you're getting into? Almost like like being naive going into an industry.
Well, Kristin, your entrance was different than that.
Yes. I am an expert in wine, and I started a wine company.
Okay.
I think that I have an advantage because of that. I look around and there's 1,000 alternative packaged wine companies popping up every day. And, they're definitely very inspired by my copy and my brand and everything we're doing. And I think I have like a bottom up sense of the industry because of that. Like I still run wine programs in Los Angeles. And so we were first to market with an orange wine because I saw that, the Gen Zs were coming in and drinking more orange wine by the glass than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's going to take, a big conglomerate years to see that data on Nielsen.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just like, in real time, oh, they like this.
You have a pulse on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also we're much more nimble. Like we could make quick changes at this stage versus like, one of the big companies, like you said, they have to go through R&D and finance, like all the stuff that we don't have to. We could just be like, I want to bust that out next, quarter, and we're going to make
Think
it
about
happen.
Sean or Brian's competition. I mean, you guys are going against major organizations, like some of the biggest in the world. And you can kind of do whatever you want as a smaller player.
Right.
But you also have the scale to make a huge impact. I mean, think about a major player doing the branding that you do.
Right. Yeah.
They can't do it.
Right. They
And that's
So-
that's how you got to position yourself, like where the big guys can't. Because if you
Right.
try and look to them and become so much like them, actually you start losing your competitive advantage. So you got to position yourself as far away from them to a place, man, we can never go there. We can never say those things or do those things, whether it's innovation or marketing or branding, that's your sweet spot. And so, it's the experts. There's things to learn from them, and then there's things that like you just can't do.
Stay
that they
away
do.
from.
Yeah.
I had a friend at the Cleveland Browns game yesterday, and they said the branding of Dude Wipes was fantastic.
We love the Browns.
We wonder why.
No, I do think that that's the tough thing about entrepreneurship or strategy is, when you look to the companies that are successful, they're successful because they've done the things that have worked. And so they've, made the errors, they've self-corrected. And so they have this well-oiled machine. And so there is an aspect of just copying that is it's well-worn tracks. But if you just do the well-worn tracks, you feel you're identical to them. They already have a bigger name, they have bigger resources. And so you cannot be successful doing the well-worn tracks. And so you do have to be that tangential, perpendicular item. But that perpendicular item, that may be the mistake that they've already corrected. That they've screwed up and moved back on. And so you have to find where, you can't take this perspective of, I'm going to do everything different, because then you're just trying to reinvent the wheel that's already been created many times. But you're trying to find the one or two core areas that, this is different, this is unique, this is where they're falling short to serve the customer. And then you have to lean very heavy into that and very much depart the typical course.
I'm going to stick with you. You ready?
I'll try.
What's a personal trait? And I kind of want all of you to chime in too, but Brian's going to start it off. What's a personal trait that you think CEOs need to have?
Narcissism.
You're gonna say it's time to sound out. It's an entrepreneur bro page now. Let's try it out. Yeah.
No, I'd probably go comfort with ambiguity. And this may be one of your questions, an apology, but everyone was oh, what's the typical day of a CEO? And the standard response.
It's not one of my questions.
You're looking right at his notes there.
Yeah.
What is no, it's especially when you start a company, you start from nothing. It's an idea, it's a PowerPoint, it's a model, it's a projection, it's a story, and you're trying to create this big company over time. And so you can draw the path, draw the map to get there. 0% chance it goes like that. Of every single step along the way, something unexpected happens. You're the recipient of every single problem within the company, and you're just trying to push forward on that path while dealing with all of those items. And so I would say the ability to sort of be focused on that long-term vision while navigating the million things that are inevitable.
Yeah.
Some are going to bounce your way, some are going to bounce against you. You have to adapt, you have to adjust, you have to go. And so just the comfort with that ambiguity, I think, is necessary, because a lot of people I want to know what the next 6 months look like, the next year, the next 3 years. And in most entrepreneurial journeys, the outcomes are so dramatically wide, and it's going to fluctuate so dramatically that you have to be comfortable with that and still pursue the mission, keep people motivated while all of those things are happening.
Yeah, I think what you were saying there is the team a lot of times wants that, hey, what's the next 6 months look like? Right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a founder, you need to be comfortable in that ambiguity, like you just said. but you need to be able to translate it.
For sure. And in some sense, you have to like project the confidence
100%.
as if you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I have the answer book and I'm going to give it to you like a page at a
This is
time.
why.
Like, yeah. But
Behind the scenes, you're like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
Here's
like,
the plan.
ask anybody
draw
to
this up.
project anything 6 months out, a year out. Like it's not going to be the most accurate. And so, no, it is a, I do think you can still paint the vision, you can paint the picture, and you can paint the roadmap to there, but the idea that you're going to paint every single step along that way is a fallacy.
Well, and also, I think you need a healthy dose of reality, right? Because we go in with like, our bright eyes and bushy tail, like this is going to be the biggest thing that ever happened. But then you have to realize, like, maybe not. Like, look at the research, talk to the customers. Like, you need to be realistic about it, and that's something I think so many entrepreneurs have, which is like, I want to change the world. I want, this pie in the sky exit. I want all this stuff. But in reality, you have to do the work to understand what the actual kind of landscape is. And then also a healthy dose of reality and realizing, like, I don't know everything. So I bring in people that know more than I do. Like you said, you hire people that are better than you are at certain things and know your strengths and know your weaknesses. And I think that's all about just really understanding things from a realistic perspective.
Yeah. You were going down the path of like, talking to the customers, talking to whoever it is ultimately going to be your end user. So I think like, kind of piggybacking on both of you guys a little bit, I think the biggest thing for like a founder or a CEO is curiosity, right? So like you have to be insatiably curious about like whatever it is, right? So like talking to a customer, it's like, do you like this? Yes or no? It's like, okay, well, why? Well, how? Well, help me understand that. So I think the curiosity component for me is like critical, and it's in every conversation. Like, if a team member comes to you with an issue, is like, curious, like why? Like I genuinely want to understand what's going on, right? How can I help?
And you have to be open
His
on how
word
to
was
move
better
forward.
than mine, so
Swap
Yeah,
out.
right. No, I
No, it
totally agree, because it's like every day there's a new problem. And when you approach problems in a measured, like take a step back, I used to panic when things would go wrong. Like my first 3 years as a founder was just awful. Like, especially with production runs, there's always like, it's in booze, there's just a million problems, and I would absolutely lose it. And then a mentor of mine was like, just stop panicking, and you always get through it, you always figure it out. When you approach things with curiosity, like problem solving, it's a fun puzzle.
It becomes a puzzle.
Yeah.
It becomes fun,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, 100%.
But I feel like resilience is my like number one founder trait. Yeah. When I was
Otherwise, you're screwed.
You really are.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's really hard. And there are so many low moments. And I think having to show up and put on a face sometimes when you feel like the world is crumbling around you, it just takes a lot of fortitude.
I always do think there's, 100, 1,000 possible problems that you could be working on, and you got to pick like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And so that means, if there's 100, it's like, okay, I'm going to let 97 things just be broken and not do anything about it, and that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. And so, it does feel like you're always failing to solve the issue as opposed to succeeding. Like even if you are succeeding, you're just like, given enough time, given enough energy, I could make this better, but I just don't have the resources, or the team doesn't have the resources. And so it is this, the resiliency to accept a whole lot of things that are going to go bad and just focus on the few things that you can make go right.
Yeah. And it's hard to, and kind of back to the CEO versus founder question. It's hard to do that when you've come, because as a founder, it's sort of like that meme where it's like, hey, everything's fine, but the house is on fire behind it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that, but then you're also very operational, like you're action oriented, I would say, right? Otherwise, none of us would be doing any like the thing here, right? So it's that what you just said is delicate to say, okay, there's 100 things, and I can only focus on 3. But if you can drive yourself crazy, if you also are constantly thinking about the other 97 because you want to get in, you want to try it, I think that's a bit of kind of what you guys are both saying. Take a step back. What it actually matters, what we actually focus on.
I think too, like the difference between like company 3 and company 1 for me is I wouldn't sleep. It literally was all consuming, and you realize like that doesn't help you in the long run. And so like I can go to sleep and be like, I'll figure this out tomorrow, which I could not do
Right.
the first couple times. I just couldn't. But now I have kids, so then that also puts things in perspective. We're like, I got to focus on them. Like this is not my only baby, meaning my company, Globowl, right? It's not my only baby. I have actual human babies now. And so it just makes things easier when you realize I'm not going to make my best decision at 2 a.m. It's just not going to happen. If I sleep and I take care of my health and I like wake up refreshed, I can make that decision. Or I can look at this problem now. And I just think that's just something I think that takes time, but it's important. And I wish I knew it before. Like I wish, you could go back and do things differently, but youth is wasted on the young and blah, blah, blah.
It is one of those
I
things.
sound really old when I say that.
I love how you just tied that up real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's also, because you're in it, because you're working on it, you sort of, there's an element of self-importance where you think everything's going to break if you're not involved. And then I'm sure everyone's had the position where they go on vacation and they come back and it's like, it's fine.
Whoa.
And then you're like,
Yeah.
it's better.
It's better. What the hell? I got to get back into it.
I should just be on vacation all year.
And so, I do think having those things to put a sense of proportion into the actual problems also helps because, you can, I think you have the possibility of like turning yourself mad focusing on it, but it's not like real, it's not objective. It is only the handful of things that matter. Things are going to be better than you expect. The team can handle a lot more, so just getting that, being able to step out of it is super helpful.
There's also like a responsibility element to it. I think this is one of the things I've learned is like as the company's gotten bigger and we've gotten more team members, more employees and everything, is if you are making the 2 a.m. decisions or even like just the sometimes like the one-off comments, if you're not careful, can be taken as a directive, right? And then all of a sudden, like, I've had this happen where I'll say like a one-off brainstorming comment, and then 2 weeks later, a team comes back and says, "Hey, here's this." And I'm like,
I was just commenting on it.
That was my first idea. It was the worst one I had.
but it's
said that off the cuff.
Yeah, no, literally, it's like it said it off the cuff, and it's like, okay, there's like a different level of responsibility, a different level of, I guess, call it directives, and if you can't make those decisions, generally on a whim, but like. Right. You start to get to a point where you have to be a lot more thoughtful about, okay, how am I interacting with the team? What am I actually saying in this situation? And that's again kind of back to that curiosity thing. Is like ask a lot more questions before just saying, hey, go do this. Hey, go do this.
For sure, yeah.
Sean, outside looking in from your branding and how you market yourself and the way the company is going, seems like everything's going very well.
Oh,
growth is going
great. No problems at all.
The house is on fire.
Yeah, no issues at all, dude. I mean, all right. Do you have any regrets as the CEO, or I should say CED, Chief Executive Dude?
Yeah.
That you have made in your CEO career? Specific stories or moments where you were like, oh, I really should not have done that?
No regrets, just mistakes, right? You're going to make mistakes all along the journey, and because you're like action orientated and just in there and trying things, they're always going to go wrong. But yeah, I can't look at any of them as like regrets because you made this mistake, you learned this thing, okay, now we're going in this direction. So yeah, I've never once been like, oh man, that's a big regret. It's just like, oh, that kind of went wrong. We shouldn't have done that. So now next time when we encounter this,
switch.
Yeah, which direction are we going to go in?
Has anyone, what's some of the hardest, this is an open-ended question, what's some of the hardest decisions, and I'd prefer some specificity, but, what's some of the hardest decisions you've had to make as CEO?
So I was reading, my friend sent me this yesterday. Harvard Business School did a study on the difference between founders and like legacy CEOs. And one of the major things is founders really value loyalty, and that can be a really great trait, but can also be a flaw because we don't let people go when we need to.
Yeah.
And we are very slow to make those decisions. And I think that is something that was really hard for me.
Like you held on to some people.
Yes,
a little too long.
I shouldn't have. And I knew that they weren't right.
Yeah.
And I just really dragged my feet.
Yeah, and then so I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think I know you asked for specificity, but there's like a lot of cases where it's almost like you know it in your gut. You're like, okay, this probably isn't going to work out long term, but they've been here for a while, and I really care about them as a person, and
like no one wants to fire.
No. It's like I don't think people are going around and doing that. But there's this element of, like loyalty. Hey, you've been here, you've seen the whole thing, like
You
you're
helped
growing.
me build this.
100%.
Yeah.
And every single time, like the month after the decision's made, I'm like, I should have made that 6 months ago. Like we should have just, because we're just
Clarity right away.
Yeah, it's every time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the minute you get that
We've
little
experienced
inkling.
that ourselves, right? Like when we make a decision and you realize it right away that was the right decision. Because in your gut, it probably should have been done much sooner.
Yeah.
It happens every single time, at least in my experiences. Sorry, this isn't the CEO Roundtable with Will.
Yeah. Sure.
I was gonna say, I think there's mistakes you make as a founder and mistakes you make as a CEO, and they're pretty different or can be different. I would say trusting your gut is the most important thing. Like I've in life, in work, because the mistakes that I've made and decisions that have been made in the past, I didn't listen to it. And so, for instance, it's learning who to trust. It's or who to hire, whatever it might be. But like also the decision: do you want a co-founder? Do you not want a co-founder? Are you going to do this alone? Like, and so for me, I had a co-founder my first time around, which there's so many wonderful benefits. However, I picked someone that my gut was like, don't
Maybe
do it.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there was a weird feeling. Like I'm like, there's something untrustworthy. And sure enough, lots of things came out, and it was a horrible situation that ended up costing me a lot of money in legal fees and a lot of money in cleaning things up. And ultimately, it was part of a demise, like the demise of the company. And the company had an exit. It wasn't what it should have been.
Yeah.
And all of that could have been avoided if I had just listened, to my gut. So
Yeah.
I think like founders sometimes have like big decisions to make and big feelings to have, and they should listen. And then CEOs, there's also nitty gritty details that, that need to be addressed and stuff too. But I would say listening to your gut and making sure you're surrounded by the right advisors, the right team, the right founders, the right staff.
The advisory, I don't know if you guys have
Advisory
advisory
board,
boards, but like to me, that's every single time I've started a new business, it's always one of the first things is, okay, who's the advisory board?
Yeah.
Like, how do you surround yourself with advisors? And like the beauty of it is they've already hit a lot of the speed bumps that you're inevitably going to hit. Like to your point, like
Right.
it's not going to go to plan at all. There's going to be a ton of things wrong. So if you can have a group of like 3, 4, 5 like super trusted people
Yes.
that are there's a loyalty element, but there's also they're looking out for you, right? To some extent, coaching you. That's been a huge unlock for me personally. Is just having the right people to not to say, hey, do go right or go left, but say, hey, I've gone right in my career, and this is sort of how it ended up. So that's a data point for you as you're making your decision. Different industry, different market, different time, all that different things. But it's like a trusted data source and input source, and also like maybe sometimes commiserating source.
I actually think on the commiseration, it's just having someone who, because I think there are times where it's something unfolds unexpected, and you like sort of look back and say, did I make a mistake? And the hiring aspect we were talking about, hey, have waited too long. But one of my mentors was like, the best hires bat 500, 750. Like you never get it perfectly right.
Yeah.
And then like the idea that if you got it perfectly right, it's you probably spent way too long hiring the person. You probably like weren't taking the risk enough. And so just even having someone who's been there, done that, and been like, even you're trying to tilt the odds in your favor, and sometimes you still lose those bets. And it's like that doesn't necessarily make it a mistake. It's a item that you have to like keep progressing despite all the things that go against you. And there is there's a lot of comfort in someone who's been through that journey, who just like is like, you don't need to beat yourself up for something going wrong. You need to, I don't even know if it's correct. You need to be forward focused and march towards that.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like why everyone always talks about culture being the most important thing, because that just becomes your filter for people. So that's how all these decisions get made, and that can eliminate yourself. Like if you set a culture, this is the way people act here, this is the way we go to work, and all of a sudden the CEO isn't meeting that culture, there should be other people around getting him or her out of the seat. And so like, culture just becomes this filter that takes a little bit of the, maybe you don't wait 6 months too long because you clearly define the culture and this person wasn't, falling into it. It's still always going to take longer, than it should. But that's the one thing I've learned over time, just the more we define this culture and just say like, this is the way it is, the more those things can kind of help work themselves out. and you have to be accountable at the top. Like, you know, if I don't fit this culture, you know, then it's time for a new person.
Yeah.
And your business specifically probably filters out culture, filters out people. They may look at how you brand yourselves or Dude Wipes. You know, they may say, I don't even want to work at that company, or I do want to work at that company. So hopefully the way you brand yourself and the way all of you brand yourselves, it kind of filters people in and out depending on what you're projecting.
Yeah, it's like a pre-filter to someone even stepping in the door. Oh, I kind of know what that place is like, you know, am I interested in it versus, if you're not quite as loud about that, then maybe, you know, people don't know, but your culture should come across in your brand. So like externally to the consumer and internally to the people, like they're not exactly the same, but people should be able to feel it just from like your Instagram handle. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of how those
That's how
guys
they do things,
believe. And I either like agree with that and I'm interested in going there, or like, no, you know, that's not for me.
Not for me.
Yeah, but you'll still get people who are just looking for a job.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll go around that stuff, and that's where you got to kind of like drill into
They
them.
apply to 50 different places.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's always like culture fit over talent fit for us, like all day.
Were you guys purposeful about setting the culture at the beginning of the businesses, or did you let it like morph as it grew?
Yeah, I mean, we set like values for the business, like day one, almost year one, that are still pretty intact, but it evolves. Like the culture evolves from when you have just a couple people to 10 to 20 to 30, like things, you know. So very comfortable with the culture like evolving. It's just continuing to define it, continuing to tweak it, and then also, hey, we have these day one values. Like if we're straying from any of them, we all have to agree upon it. We have to talk about why, but those aren't also like the 10 commandments or some shit, you know, like they can, you know, you can say, hey, 10 years ago, we said this was a value, and today, you know, we're replacing it with something.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, because I'm sure everyone's worked at companies that have their values that they feel, you know, like a consulting firm put them together.
Right.
They're on the wall. No one knows what they are. Yeah.
I do think in the early days, you know, it probably starts with founding team, and then every person you add to it, like, bakes your culture a little bit more. And so, you know, there is you sort of inherit the personality of the team that you acquire, and then at some point it becomes so big that it is a self-selecting mechanism that people either feel like they match it or they don't, and it would be very hard to like, hey, this culture has been baked for 200, 300 people. I, as one person, am going to come in and, you know, overhaul it.
Right.
You know, so I do think it develops, you know, there's, again, sort of this direction that you can apply to it, and then it develops very organically, and you're sort of like tilting it and modifying it, as opposed to, I think it's very hard to be concrete of like what the personality of your firm's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think one person can set the culture. Like, I don't think myself as a founder can be like, this is going to be the culture of our office one day. It doesn't work like that. It's a product of the environment and the people that you bring in. Like, I can say as a founder, like, these are our mission. This is our mission as a company. These are the values that we are, you know, are aligned with and what we want when we hire people. But I don't know. I can't implement the culture. It's like, you know, it really does take a village in that way.
You can keep it by like helping the teams, like, hey, this person is not a culture fit, so I have to remove them from the situation because they're affecting the culture. But what that culture is starts to become out of your control.
Right,
you know?
It's community.
Yeah, every team has their own little microcosm, and it probably does inherit a little bit of whoever's the most senior person on the team. And so, to your point, it's the person selection of, you know, hey, if it's migrating this way and you don't like that, you know, you swap them out and find the right thing to get the company aligned.
I do think on back to the hardest question and talking about, you know, hey, what's the right time to let someone go or something. I do think the empirical metrics are kind of easy. Actually, it's like you either hit your sales quota or you didn't. Right?
Yeah.
You're hitting your goals or you didn't. I actually think the culture things are like a little bit harder because and that's where I think the gut, for me at least, the gut comes. It's like you're kind of not the right fit. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure that you're not. But I'm 100% sure
they're an
you're.
amazing performer, and then they're like an amazing performer at work, but they're not a culture fit. Then
So
you need to make a tough decision.
10 times out of 10, remove them. because I think the culture, the thing you said is like at the end of the day is
Could be toxic.
it's the key. Yeah, I mean, and one person, I think one person can't like abruptly change the culture. I do think one person can like start to poison the culture.
Yeah,
though.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's that whole like one rotten egg will start to spoil a bunch. So like that, if it's like a toxic person, but they're an A+ performer, it just starts bleeding into everybody else.
It makes it almost worse because they're a good performer, and maybe some of the other people are like, well, it's working out for this person, and it kind of
sure.
gives them credibility almost.
It's almost easier at small companies, I think, than maybe it sounds to like regulate that kind of stuff. I think it becomes a problem at bigger companies where top performers can be toxic. And it's 10,000 people, and so there's so many layers, and it just happens. And that's one of the reasons like those bigger companies have a hard time keeping good culture.
That's a good point.
Erica,
Yes.
I'm locked in on you.
Okay.
Although I want everyone else to give it as well. Give me a story of the harshest feedback that you've gotten when raising money or pitching your business.
Oh my God. I mean, as a founder, you have to be totally okay with rejection. I mean, I'm rejected all the time. Like it's fine. It's like, okay. I did theater a lot in high school and post college, and it's like I was told no all the time. You never got cast, whatever. So I tell people, you have to have a strong sort of resolve and just say, whatever.
Did anyone tell you stupid idea?
No. Because it's not. I feel like it's universally not a stupid idea.
That's intense too. If someone said that.
A million people have said that to me.
Really?
Wine in a can?
What?
Sacrilegious. Like,
Right, yeah.
I could see
Especially,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
But that's
I'm
crazy.
like a fine dining sommelier. Like I'm an expert in Burgundy and Barolo and Champagne and like collectible wines, and I want to put fine wine in a can.
Does it have a taste effect?
No, not ours.
No, think about how they-
Some people are sloppy and lazy with their. It's not the
With
same
how
as
they-
putting it in a bottle. You do really have to do a lot of work on the chemistry analysis. I mean, fermentation is chemistry. You have to buy high quality cans with, BPA-free liners. You can't buy cheap cans because the wine will corrode it and then it'll taste like that. But I think the worst thing, and this is, I don't know if you get this a lot of male investors who I've pitched, because I've raised millions of dollars. I'm like 1% of female founders who've raised the amount of capital I have. But something I used to hear all the time before, and now we have retail data, which people can't really argue with at all, but they'd be like, oh, I have to give it to my wife to see if she likes this.
Oh, geez.
Or let me see if my daughter likes this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Shut up.
shut up. Like,
I think raising capital as a woman, it's single, not to get into that, like it's a whole discussion.
Get
that we
into
can,
it.
No, we
Yeah.
can get into it, but it would take like hours and hours and hours. But there's so much to say on the topic. But it's just crazy, how much, as a female founder, you have to kind of prove yourself versus someone that can go in with the same idea and not have to do with less experience, less background, and be able to kind of obtain money a little bit easier. So I could go on and on about this because I've raised money too, and it's not easy. It's very challenging as a woman.
So I can only imagine, right? Because I remember this isn't the harshest feedback I've gotten, but this is maybe the most like ego knocking down feedback I've ever gotten. Is I remember calling my mom, right? And I was like, we just sold my first company, and I was like, hey, I was feeling like really like pumped up, and I was telling her, hey, it's done all this stuff, by this age, and like really cool, and she I never forget this. She goes like, honey, that's great. I'm so proud of you. You got to remember you were born a white male in the United States of America in like a suburban area, and I'm like,
She knocked you down.
and
a
I was
notch.
like, and I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
and I was like, yeah. You're right. Like it was like it was a really, really good. I'll never forget it. I was like, she told me I was 25. I think that was just like a really good reset for me, because I think if left unchecked, that can end up in the wrong spot. Right?
Someone just used the expression like born on second base or born on third base or something, and I actually had not heard that expression before. But I was like, that's really interesting. Yes, like you have to accept certain truths that you were born with or whatever that do help you in a certain way. But of course, it has to be backed by talent, by perseverance, by many other things. But we, as the mom of a little boy, he's 8, we read books on this kind of stuff. Like we read books on white privilege, we read books on feminism. Like it's important for me, like with this new generation of kids, like we have the opportunity to implement some change and to influence the way the next generation kind of thinks and goes into the world. And I'm really excited about like the next generation of founders and how things are going to go in that way. But
Brian and Sean. I looked at Brian. I looked at Sean for Brian, and I looked at you. Yeah, you guys
identical.
Whatever.
One's a compliment, one's an insult. We don't know which one.
We don't know which one. We're guessing. Same question to both of you. Harshest feedback with regards to your business. I'm sure both of you have gotten some based on who your competition is. Not to discredit what you all have said, but on top of that, Brian, not throwing you under the bus, but you raised $315 million.
Oh, no big deal.
Oh my God.
So Brian raised $315 million,
Wait,
and
that
I'm
deserves
interested.
a-
Deserves a big high five.
Going out there.
Texting me, please don't say that. No.
This is a,
No, I'm just kidding.
Hold your own, baby.
So I'm interested, and this can go to everyone too, and don't forget the harshest feedback you gotten, but what pressures come along with raising money and the investors that you are now aligned with and partnered with? And yes, you may want their money, but do you want them as partners? So I'm interested in the pressures that come along with it, because outside looking in, when I see $300 million raised or any amount raised, tens of millions, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, they made it. That's amazing. And I think a lot of founders and business people, they see that number and they think they made it. But
Yeah.
really, it's the start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
better do something with that.
So
that's, yeah.
I'm interested, loaded question, but I'm interested in the pressures of raising money. And I think it can be in the same vein as harshest criticism or feedback that you've gotten when pitching your business.
Because a lot of people do say no.
Right, yeah, because you had to go through a gamut of investors.
We've had fundraising be way too hard. We've had it be way too easy, and fortunate in different cycles associated with that. When started the company even with a handful of million, where 300 million would have felt like an infinite sum, and it's shocking and it feels weird to say. It's so little in the grand scheme of things, and to the set of competitors that we're dealing with, that we're a personal finance
You're
company.
in the money biz.
Yeah, I mean, he's going against Charles Schwab and
Yeah.
E-Trade.
Yeah,
I mean, these are
Fidelity,
monsters.
the big
Yeah.
banks, JP Morgan. And, especially when you're raising the sums that we've done from sort of growth venture equity investors, they don't want a 10% return. They don't want a 15% return. And even if they do want that on their portfolio, the only way that that's driven is a handful of their companies have 10x potential, 50x potential. And so you still do get this aspect of you're given $300 million with this expectation to go build a multi-billion-dollar company worth billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. And so, the idea that you can multiply 300 million into 10 billion of enterprise value, like that is, there's an aspect of it's like spinning gold out of yarn. Like way easier said than done, and the like likelihood that you are the one to do it is incredibly low, but it's sort of, you try anyway, and hopefully make the investors happy. But it's one of these things that the expectations get massive. You do have to figure out how do you use every dollar 10 times more efficiently than JP Morgan would, than Charles Schwab would. You're playing on a larger scale. You have to, while we built a good business for a few 100,000 people, customers, it's now bring it to millions of peoples. And so you're just like adding a zero to every problem. And I'd almost say it's like a filtering of going from, I don't know, a good high school athlete to then you go play college D1, so then you go play pros, and then pros, there's still like the all-stars.
Right.
And every single time the best players still make, take a LeBron, like he still makes the average NBA player look terrible. And so and these are like the creme de la creme, the people.
He's 40.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then so there is an aspect of you're always trying to sort of pass that great filter to get to the next level. And so it sort of no amount of money, I don't think, can like buy access to that next level. It sort of just gives you the opportunity to try to get into that like next elite club and continue to grow.
And I was just say, sometimes more money, more problems, right? There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. Like that's a whole nother level. Like I've raised money too, but nowhere near that. But it's all proportionate to the person that gives it to you or the company that gives it to you. But to me, you have a huge responsibility. Like, it's a
Don't
lot.
remind him.
I'm sorry.
No, and I mean, it is like, going back to mistakes that you make. When you make a mistake that, I don't know, you've raised $3 million and it costs you 10% of your capital, like it hurts.
Right.
And it's a, what did I say? I don't remember the numbers, but $3 million, 10%, so it's a $300,000 mistake. Now we make a mistake and it's a multi-million-dollar mistake.
Yep.
You're like, oh,
Yep.
like my company survived for 2 years on this amount of money that I just like made the mistake on. But you sort of have to still you're still rolling the dice, you're still taking chances, you're still trying to like have an outsized impact. And so, I would say
Well, back to your point, you have to be comfortable with the ambiguity.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even going way back to the conversation, there's no education class that can teach you how to be comfortable making a stupid decision and make like losing a few $1 million.
This is
Or,
coming
like,
from Stanford MBA too, so it's like
no, but or negotiate, like had no business negotiating the sums of money that I've had, and you have to figure it out. Like there's no playbook or there's no online blog forum of how to negotiate a term sheet for $120 million. Like so there is an aspect of you are figuring it out as you go, and even as like the money cannon comes into you, it's a lot easier to put small sums of money to work productively. The second, like putting large sums just becomes increasingly more difficult, and so it doesn't come without challenges. That being said, I will counter of massively fortunate to be working on a space and problem and company that I'm interested in with like resources galore, and so it is that aspect that despite all the issues and problems and stress that sort of keeps you going, and have had unique opportunities where it's, hey, do you want to sell the company, and there's exit, and it's like my day and purpose would be gone. Like I don't know where I would like feel like, yes, I would remove all these stressors, but like nothing terrifies me more than not having those stressors.
Yeah, sure.
That's true.
I think there's an element to that, like what you're just saying, is there is a, I use this word purposefully, is like an addiction element to it.
Oh yeah.
Right? And like what you just described is you just happen to be, and me too, or I don't want to say for you, but me at least, I happen to be addicted to something that's like a net positive usually. But it has to be, especially like with kids, right? Like I think you guys both have kids, and I do as well now. And it's like you have to start. It's a balance. Like you truly have to balance it. And I think that's just, but not do it in a way that like takes away from one or the other. It's almost like leveling up each time. And I think that's been really interesting for me, is because it is so fun, right? It's like, okay, I'm working on massive problem with friends I really like, literally friends I enjoy. It's intellectually challenging. It could have a huge impact. Like, I would do that for free, right? And it's like, that's really, really fun.
And sometimes we do.
This is true.
No, and the amount of money you would have to pay me to sit in a cubicle and be bored every day, like that would be the worst existence of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, your question is about money, but it's not about the money. And money is something that catches headlines in Wall Street, and of course is this big thing that makes society, go, but it's about being with good people, doing cool shit. And like that's what everyone here is doing, and Brian has a different capital structure where he's in a different business, and so he has to go acquire these dollars to, make it run, but that's not what it's all about. It's just a different number that he has than she has, So it's important to kind of like, it's part of the game, but it's not the game, and that's often how it's like perceived.
For sure. I watched this interview with Stanley Druckenmiller, who's this famous hedge fund billionaire, and he's, 75, still shows up at the office at 4 a.m., like leaves at 10 p.m. And he was basically given, the question of what advice would you give to other people? And he's like, if you're going in it for the money, you're not going to make money, because you're going to compete with people like me who are doing it just for love of the game.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, money is the potential byproduct of success, but it's more of a quantitative scorecard. It is not the motivation in and of itself. And if it is the motivation, a little bit of like good luck, because it's not enough of a motivator to stick with it.
You're not going to get through that time.
The pressure of the raise is not what it's about. It's about, I want to build this product, and I needed this raise to do that, so I brokered that deal. Like, he's just raising the money and moving on, and continuing to grow the product, serve his customers, and that's maybe what's hard to like appreciate from the outside. Like that's how you're operating on the inside.
I've heard a couple of people have said especially like I think multiple people around the table have sold companies, is like when you have that first exit, you have a lot of people say, oh, wait, what are you going to do now? You got to go retire and go sit on the beach. It's like,
You don't get it.
That's A, that's incredibly boring and do that for a week. B, and then that's the comment of like, oh, that's what I would do if I got to that point. And what you just said is
probably that's why they're not a CEO. Or
you're not going to get there, because if that's what you're in it for, you're not going. It's likely not going to happen. It's much harder because you're running up against people who are like a little bit crazy. I would say all of us at this table.
Yeah. And they could think that in the beginning that I want to get to the beach, but then once they get into the game, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. You know what I mean? So
addicted to the chaos a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to sit on a beach while also
both.
giving money to the next women entrepreneurs. Like I cannot wait to. That is really a strong goal of mine. Is like, and I joke, I really don't want to sit on the beach. I don't like sand. But anyway, but I would love nothing more than to be able to put that money back into the economy, into women, into moms. Like it's even harder to raise money as a mom because they don't think that you could do both. And so it's, I have big goals to help with that, what I believe is a really serious problem.
I mean, it is.
Yeah, I know. It is a problem.
The data speaks for itself there.
So you're all consumer-facing businesses. How important, or talk about the importance of branding yourselves online now with Gen Z being very digitally inclined, socially inclined. Evan, you work a lot with influencers. That's what your business is. So can we talk about the importance of branding? Sean, I want you to jump in too because of your creativity with branding. You mentioned your cans. Your whole sell is different than the competitors, and you are going up against monsters. So I'm interested in how you get yourself out there to younger people and online as CEOs who are typically more behind the scenes.
Branding is the benefit and like the idea, the emotion that you're bringing to people. So that's the first thing you sit down and do. Okay, what does my brand mean? How am I going to show up? And then it's sort of like the attention getting and the marketing aspect of it. But if you have a brand that doesn't mean anything, is no reason for anybody to pay attention, you could be the best TikToker, you could be the best LinkedIn poster, Instagram. Like if it doesn't have any pizzazz to it, it doesn't matter. So it's really not about the execution. Like dude wipes at the Browns game on the scoreboard is only hilarious because it's all paired up right, and it's dude wipes, and it's
That's why you're laughing.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
But another brand up there on that scoreboard, it doesn't work the same way. So you have to figure out who you are, and then kind of like how you're going to go out there and achieve it. And there's certain things that are hot now, like TikTok. Okay, we got to show up here. We got to figure this out. That's going to change. So I always like it. It's like that why. Why are we doing it? Who are we? And then, okay, there's all these, executions going on, and let's try and be involved in all of them. But, I've been building this brand for over 10 years, and, those things have changed. We're hot on platforms that weren't even around. So just always be on and executing and talking to people, but make sure it's coming from an interesting place, because otherwise it's just noise, and there's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah.
But what you have, I think, that you do really well is authenticity, right? Like you can't replicate that, and so even though things are funny and they're cute or quirky or whatever, they're authentic, and they're authentic to the brand, and I think that carries a lot of weight.
For sure. I mean, that's why people trust you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever brand you are. Oh, this is coming off authentic, and not everyone has to be like a goofy poop brand or whatever to be authentic. You can be aspirational, you can be motivated, you can be all these different things, but it's got to be something that someone's like, oh, that feels real to me. Okay, I'm going to trust that. I'm going to buy from them,
So we see that. So at Mavely, our whole thing is we've coined the term everyday influencers, right? And it's like that. It's specifically a branding positioning of. We were actually initially started with moms, right? And then more like everyday people, and that authenticity component. And the reason was because competitors in the marketplace were basically working with high-end fashion, high-end beauty, super filtered, private jet flying influencers, right? And it's like, okay, that's good for certain brands. It's a good part of the market, but we wanted to tap into this like more real, almost like raw experience of like everyday people can actually be influencers and promote products. And then like to your point, it's like lean into it, like go, 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 go.
Right.
And I think that's been really important to, because I think once you find the right branding, you definitely need to lean in hard, because if it's good and it works, there's other people going to try and copy it, usually with
Right.
more money, right? Or if you lean in, I bet Bank of America or Charles Schwab's going to come in and go hard at your branding, right?
More money, but
That's
less
happened,
flexibility.
Yes.
For sure. Like
They've taken certain aspects of your platform.
Oh, there's definitely some
And that's happened
copying.
with yours as well.
For sure,
Yeah.
It's called
No.
R&D, rip off and duplicate.
No, I do think like it's a very noisy, crowded marketplace. I think everything's like competitive, and if the only way that you can get in front of customers is paid dollars, the person with the biggest war chest is going to win,
Yeah.
and that's like never going to be the startup. And so I do think the startups have to find a way to resonate that is not linear related to dollars. And so, the idea that someone could buy a billboard at a stadium, anybody can do that, but like yours has this extra level of like, it makes you giggle, it makes you
Right.
laugh, you like share it, I'm sure
People are taking pictures
they'll
and
do
posting it to
Instagram,
Twitter,
Snapchat, for
like,
sure.
yeah.
Amplification.
And
Yeah.
you like Bank of America, we think we have a better financial platform than all the big financial institutions. They brand stadiums, like they actually put it, it's Chase Field, it's
Right, yeah,
Schwab
yeah.
Field. We try to play against that of like, that's where your money is going. It's not going to making the platform better. It's not going to paying you like higher interest. It's not going to lower costs. And so I do think you have to figure out a way to resonate or stand out from the crowd that gets some organic groundswell around it that
Sure.
gets people to share. And the benefit is in today's environment, more people are online and sharing, and so you do have the possibility of going viral.
And they might stink at that because they're an old legacy corporation. They
It's
might
also-
not
Yeah.
have a pulse with the younger
It's
online
harder,
crowd.
and it takes work, and it takes iteration, and it takes shots versus they have a money pot, and it's
Yeah.
like
Right.
they just grab from the money pot and
Yeah.
throw it at something.
A lot of times you don't have access to that, so you have to come up with off the beaten path or unique ways that don't cost as much money, right? Like I wish I could do a little bit more paid spend, but so much of it is just organic and finding
Yeah.
everyday influencers and people like that. Because for our brand, we are catering to parents, right, and to moms specifically, because women make more of the consumer decision making or purchasing power. And so, finding those everyday influencers that don't cost that much money but have a big impact, because
Yep.
we listen to our friends, like
And they
we.
perform so much better.
What?
I said they perform so
Yeah.
much better
Infinitely
than
better.
micro influencers.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like that's 100%.
Yeah.
I want you all to connect with that.
No, I mean,
It's true.
I
I
hate to
think,
say it,
like-
but like anytime I've spent a lot of money on a big influencer or a big celebrity partnership,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
I think consumers have trained themselves to ignore paid ads, and so
To some
it
degree,
does
yeah.
have to feel authentic, organic. Of, is it a trusted source? Is it a friend telling me this? Is it
Right.
my community that has bubbled this up? And so the idea that you can just win by spending the most, I think, is very difficult.
Well, there's also this the shift that's happened is I think you guys take advantage of it super well. But so we call it the TikTok effect internally, and it's basically like one of the reasons, besides an $8 billion marketing budget, another reason that TikTok really like took off was anyone could go viral.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why you
Yeah.
see everyone dancing on the sidewalks. Right? And like so, but the cool thing is you also see everyone dancing on the sidewalks, right? So everyone is trying. It's almost like a lottery ticket, right? People are trying to go viral. They're trying, and they're creating content, and all the other platforms saw that, and they realized, it's not about the 1 million follower person. It's actually
Right.
about the person who's creating real, authentic, engaging content, resonates with the consumer, is trusted by the consumer. So they all shifted their algorithms that way, right? So what I think that's really cool for startups, right? On us around the table and everyone else is like, now it's more cost efficient, and there's like this like army of authentic people that are able to like, if they resonate with your brand, right?
Right,
And you
right.
you truly are delivering a cool experience, like everyone around this table is. You've got millions of people now that can promote it on your behalf across all these platforms, and all these platforms are starting to like amplify that content for you. So I think a lot of the incumbents aren't really thinking about like how Gen Z are discovering, how Gen Z are doing
Oh,
things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if you have a right
It's
purpose,
changing so quick, and it is kind of the best way now. And,
Yeah.
you know, you could want to have more money for like paid media, but you're going to build a stronger brand like if you don't. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do these like other like legacy solutions, but yeah, the bigger guys get tied up in like so much legal too. Like, oh, that person
Yeah.
can't say this about our brand, you know? And like, if you just let the people talk and you give them something interesting to say. So it's shifting in a place that particularly benefits the small influencers
Yep.
and the small brands,
Yep.
which is cool because yeah, even 5 years ago, the scale was not like tipped like this.
Yep.
I'm also, you know, you used to hire a creative agency and, you know, it'd be 5 people in a room batting forth ideas to like have a funny idea. My guess is with your audience, you get, you know, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, million people like creating their own jokes associated with it. It is like, you know, being able to crowdsource that is
For sure.
like infinitely better than what 5 people in a room are going to do.
Yeah, exactly. The best
Kristin.
idea will bubble up, you know?
You have a unique challenge because people obviously drink wine out of a bottle. So I'm interested how you are getting your mission out there because, again, it's so ingrained into our brains. Like, that's where wine is. I mean, look behind us. There it is. So I'm interested in how you brand yourself and how you've had success.
So I hate being on camera.
You do?
And I hate it. I look directly into the camera. I like wish I didn't have to be on social media either. I like really, it's not my favorite thing in the world. I would be an anonymous person with like a burner account that I just post memes to. And every time I've tried to take a step back from making all the ads myself, our performance suffers. And so I think it proves people want an expert. They want to hear about my accolades and work experience because I'm a trusted source. And I just have to talk about wine a lot. I think people also think Gen Z and millennials, I've seen a lot of brands in my space come out and really dumbed their product down. And I think it's been a massive mistake because they're assuming that these people aren't highly educated, curious. I mean, you think about it, especially with Gen Z, they grew up on the internet. Like, their brains are working at the speed of light. It's like, they are curious. They do want to know about where does this wine come from and how it's made and why is it 0 grams of sugar and why is this aluminum can better for the environment than a glass bottle.
And
so,
they care more about that than some of the older consumers.
Yes.
So maybe
Right.
drive that point
And they're
home,
not
yeah.
as stuck in the habit. They're open to new things. They're not
And they
50
drink-
years
They just
old.
turned
but-
20.
Yeah.
Drinking wine out of a bottle for the last 30 years.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
care.
And
yeah.
they love cans. They love drinking out of cans. I mean,
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
Celsius.
Right.
We full circle back to Celsius. but like,
Always back to
yeah.
Celsius.
Seltzers.
Maybe they should sponsor.
Yeah.
I'd also argue that the reason maybe the ads were suffering when you took yourself away is because people really deeply care about the humanity behind a brand. Like, people are very interested in purchasing from a brand where they're like, oh, that's a relatable person who does good work, or that's a mom on a mission, or that's a this. You know, people feel very driven to make purchasing decisions based on the person behind the brand. And in fact, having gone through the Target Accelerator, there are statistics that women at Target buy 90% women-owned brands. Like, it's really fascinating. And so I think you kind of, to a degree, I don't like it either, but to a degree you have to put yourself out there because that could be your edge, is that people like you, or they like your story, or they like that you're an expert, you know, versus, you know, the bottles that you don't know who's behind it, right? So I think it's important to kind of do humans first, you know, and tell the story of why did you do something, or why was your brand created. People relate to that.
Well, right now, I mean, we're in this like really cool age where like, anyone at any time can create, you know, a new brand or a new persona or a new, like, anywhere in the world, right? And so I think for that reason, you get a lot of, you know, historically people were like sales reps or people were like a distribution channel of a product, right? But now like people are becoming the brand, and it's actually going the opposite way. People are building their own persona, their own brand, and then launching products, right? It's like going the opposite way, right? So to your point is like, you know, love it or hate it, like
Yeah.
you're the brand, right? You're kind of the brand, right? Like there's these different things that are happening where people like a person and a brand are becoming synonymous versus like being separate.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, it all comes back to authenticity. Like when J-Lo launches the tequila brand and she doesn't booze, it's like, I'm sorry, like that
ain't
one's
it.
not gonna work. You know what I mean?
This isn't
But,
it.
like when Rihanna is super into makeup and she gets all into it, and boom, like that's going to be a massive success. So
I also think it gets to what the product actually is, and I think people want a product or whatever they're consuming to have some element of craftsmanship associated with it, and have it be the high quality. And there is an aspect of, well, what makes me believe that this is high quality, but for it has like fancy packaging, and that like authenticity of, I'm incredible. Like it came from someone who's incredibly passionate about it, who studied it forever, who has tried every single thing on the market and thought that that wasn't enough. We need to do something different. Like it is. Yeah. It's not even just this projection of authenticity. It is the authenticity.
Yep.
It's the craftsman who came to the equation and said, nope, what exists on the market is not good enough. Let me put something better out there. And that's where the consumer resonates of like, I want the best. I want the most value, and they hopefully consume it.
The projection of authenticity is the exact opposite of authenticity.
It's funny with like the dude thing, and I didn't even realize this right away, but because we were like, our story was like, oh, we're these dudes, we're sloppy, we're messy, we're eating burritos, we're drinking beers, like,
relatable.
It's super nasty, and so we need these big, extra large dude wipes and like all these things, and because that's what we needed. And then everyone else kind of looked like
authentic.
Like, well, if it's good enough for those dudes, and they're like the sloppiest of like, the hierarchy, it's gonna be great for me, And so like moms will buy them, like all sorts of people will buy them because it's sort of like, well, they designed it for almost like the worst situation, like your Animal House like lifestyle. Yeah. And so even if you're not living that lifestyle, you go, well, that's kind of the best, like because they built it for dudes, and so it's very funny the amount of customers we get who don't fit that bill, but they go, oh well, yeah, that's got to be the best.
I love that. Like the situation you just described is literally shittier than like a diaper blowout. Like, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
Do you use dude wipes with the newborn?
Yeah, we do. We use dude
I
wipes,
figured. Yeah. All right.
Does the job.
I'll send you some too.
There we go. Yeah. All right, I got 2 more questions. Closing the book.
Oh, wow.
All right.
It's not that deep. Or is it? What keeps you up at night? Let's start with Erica.
Told you I go to bed and I make decisions in the morning. I don't do the 2 a.m. decision making. No, I mean, I have people that work for me, and I feel very obligated to make sure that we're bringing in the money that we need to support them and their lifestyle. That does keep me up at night. And we have investors, and I only raise friends and family at this point for this company. And so proportionately, the amount of money that they give is a lot because it's out of their own pocket. They're not a corporation. And so like that's constantly in my head. Like these people just gave me their hard-earned money that they work for every day. They give up time with their kids to go to work to make this money. They're giving it to me. So it's, that to me is like, that's the biggest thing. It's just making sure I can give back to the people that have made this whole thing possible. Yep, that's what keeps me.
Let's just go around the table, and then I have another question that we'll do another roundabout.
Yeah, I'd echo very similar sentiments of, you started, like, when you start something, you get a lot of people that count on you, whether it's your investors, whether it's, the people that you bring on to the company, whether it's your consumers. And so, there's an obligation of, there's a joke of, or not a joke, but like saying that as a CEO or founder, you don't have a boss. And it's like, man, I feel like I have infinite bosses.
Yeah.
Like every one of the, our investors are bosses, my employees are bosses, my customers are bosses. But there is something incredibly rewarding working on behalf of them and like in service of them. Then the other thing that I would say is like most during the day interrupted with a lot of things that are not like the top items that I want to be working on in the job. And then there's a whole slug of things that I actually do like to work on. And so like, the staying up at night is just being able to apply myself towards the things that I actually enjoy doing in the job. And
the email's not blowing up. Yeah.
Yes, that's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this might not be the right answer, but nothing really keeps me up at night. So sleep like a baby. And, I'm doing my best. I'm going to keep doing my best. And as long as you can count on that, the other things are going to fall into place. And, you know, had times early on being an entrepreneur when you would stress about the things at night, and that's just not for me anymore.
Same.
Love it.
Yeah, same. I remember an advisor said to me a few years ago, he's like, you just have to finish each day and know that you're always going to feel like you failed, you didn't accomplish what
Right.
you wanted to accomplish, your to-do list is getting longer.
Yeah.
But also you have to sleep and
Yeah.
like be with your husband and
right.
eat a dinner.
Right. Watch a Netflix show.
Yeah, like
Yeah, be a normal person.
be a normal
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But I do worry a lot. I like think about this psychotically often, but I feel worried for the younger generation that's growing up. So the reason why we're in cans and boxes is because it's infinitely more sustainable than glass bottles. Majority of the carbon footprint in a bottle of wine comes from the glass bottle. And I worry a lot about climate change and how it affects the wine industry and how it will affect everyone. That like really,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Well, and it
that
directly
really-
it like directly affects like, you know, I guess everyone, and then also specifically your industry too.
Yes,
Right? I know there's like
yes.
a lot of stuff happening in the wine industry that's
yeah,
like, quickly.
you cannot grow wine in certain areas, or like we're not going to have wine from some of the best areas in France in like 10, 20 years probably. It's just not going to be the same. It's really, I don't know, it's sad. These are people's livelihoods. You know, these are farmers that have
Right.
worked that land for,
Generations.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
For sure.
I don't know. That like really keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's real. It's like a real thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
non-business
How are you gonna
stuff
follow
does
that?
it.
Well,
Future of the planet.
so mine's a really easy one. Is our toddler jumps in our bed
Yeah.
around like 11 and 30.
7-month-old
Yeah.
probably keeps you up at night.
Yeah. So I got two things keeping me up at night. No, they actually do that, and they actually do keep me up at night. But I love it. It's very cute.
Yeah.
I'm a snuggler. But I mean, like a lot of what you guys are saying, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people depending on like all of us, right? And I think about that not like myopically, but it's also like I definitely think about, especially as the decisions get bigger and bigger, right? To your point, like adding zeros to the decisions, there is a bigger and bigger responsibility of if you make the wrong decision, right? It has a right and wrong, I guess, has a larger impact, right? And so as companies get bigger, and if you do make the wrong decision, not only does it affect like me as the founder and CEO, it could affect like tens, 20s, hundreds of people, right? And that's a big deal, right? To everything you just said. And I also think we're all consumer companies, so there's like a next layer to this thing of consumers. Right? If you guys mess up,
Yeah.
Oh, it's people's money.
no, it really affects, right? And
We also have regulators that do keep me up at night as well. so.
But no, I mean there's
failed to
like
mention
real
that.
consequence. There's real consequences to being a consumer company. I think you said it is like it's not just you're not only serving a large corporation that kind of if something messes up, it's not really going to directly affect someone's livelihood. Where if you mess up with a consumer, it's a real thing, right? And we do it with influencers. They're like we work with a bunch of small. Think of them as like functionally small business owners, right?
Right.
And so if we mess something up, it not only affects our team, our employees, it affects all these small businesses, right? And then all their families. So there's like this. There is that element, but you got to bring yourself up, or at least I got to bring myself up. Otherwise, you could drive yourself crazy.
Totally.
Right? And
Yeah.
it's like at the end of the day, you're doing the best you can. So.
All right, last one. We're going to start with you, and we're going to come around here.
All right.
What do you want your legacy to be as a CEO? Like, you're all young. You all have a long business career ahead of you. So what are you looking to achieve personally? What do you want your business life to be?
It's a pretty
Deep.
good one. No, I think it's neat. I think for me, so one of the things I've always wanted to be in a situation where I'm working with people I genuinely enjoy working with on something that I think is like really fun and solves a hard problem, and then has an opportunity to impact people positively, but then do it on a really massive scale. Right? I think for me, those are like if I'm doing that, I'll do that for free. So I would say like generally that's the legacy that I want to leave, but I think that at least what I've observed is as especially in business, as like anyone becomes more and more successful in business, like you can get sharper elbows, or you can get like you have experiences. You're like, oh, man, that person really tried to do that thing at that time. So you can get a little sharper, you can get a little more cynical. And so what I get excited about is, hopefully continue to grow the business, but doing it from a place of like, compassion and curiosity, and like being an example for like, my daughters, and how to say, okay, you can be super, super, super successful and massively impact the world and not be an asshole about it, right? And I think to me that's like the special sauce there. And at Mavely, we talk a lot about like the Mavely ripple here, and we all have our own ripples, right? But like I think so we think about it as, all of us sitting around this table are CEOs, so we're running our teams, however big or small they are. But then, at least for Mavely, we have these influencers that are also reaching hundreds of millions or billions of people on social media. And so like the decision that I make, or each of us make around this table, impacts our teams, which impact the consumers we're serving, or the influencers that impacts hundreds of millions or billions of people. I think that's like a really cool ripple that we all have the opportunity to do. And so I think just having a positive ripple is kind of what I want to do.
Yeah.
I like that.
Man, all I can think about is that Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great quote.
Did you see this? The child was interviewing him, and she was like, "What's your legacy?" And he's like, "I don't care about my legacy. We're all gonna die." And he's like, "You are talking to a 7-year-old."
Okay.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool."
We're all stardust.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I took it that way. I was
Yeah.
like, that was brilliant for someone who I did not
Brilliant.
assume to take life advice from. Yeah.
God, the philosophy of Mike Tyson. I subscribe to it. No, so the wine industry has been in a pretty steep decline over the last few years because young drinkers are not drinking the way their parents drank. And so I really want my legacy to be.
I want to make them drink more.
I do. I want people to drink more and go out and go on dates and get drunk and have a one-night stand and like live your lives. I feel like people are so stuck on their phones, and something really beautiful about wine is it's analog. It's an experience. You share wine with somebody else. And also you. Mommy juice. I'm like, we should collab. I really want it to. This sounds like so narcissistic, but I guess maybe that's just being a CEO, founder. But I want to save the wine industry. I love it. I've dedicated my life to it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
That's
awesome.
really cool.
Me too.
I would say, people would look back and say, dudes used to have a lot of skid marks in their underwear. Dingleberries and all of these things because of the dry, crusty toilet paper industry. And some dudes came along and changed it up, made people a little more fresh, a little more confident. Had a little bit more fun along the way too. And we're kind of as we all are, like I like the David versus Goliath, story. Mm-hmm. And so just some guys without any experience sitting on a couch, can do this big thing and have all this fun while they're doing it. Maybe I could do it too. Mm-hmm. So just the promotion of small business and, making the American dream come true. Like, hey, that's still out there, and there's a lot of cases where, people who had no business doing it are still doing it, and you see that every day. And so I enjoy being able to like amplify that message.
Love it.
Me too.
So I actually did love the Mike Tyson quote. I also used the everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And so Mike Tyson might be my like spirit animal or something. But I don't think much about like the word legacy of like post being gone. What will people think? It really is. We're in a competitive market. I think the consumer is rational and they're looking for the best place to manage their money. And I would say, if M1 gets large, it means we are doing a better job at helping them manage their money than all the other people that are trying to do the same thing. And so I'd say, it's a combination of just some competitive aspect associated with that, of wanting to beat other smart people working in this space. And then there's how big it gets is proportional to how well you're serving your client base. And so to me, it's just get the company as large as possible, and that means that we're doing a good job.
Awesome. Close it out.
Okay. So through the company Globowl, we're introducing kids to international flavors and food. Great. but there's an educational component about that. So if we're going to be feeding kids pad thai or something else from around the world, we're also educating them on that part of the world. So there's this educational component. So to me, these kids, yes, they're getting healthier options and hopefully they won't be picky or have allergies or all these other things. But most importantly, when they learn about the world from the very, very beginning, and they learn that there are other people and other cultures and other places, we're building more open-minded, curious, tolerant people. And I really believe, like, you know, can a jar of baby food change the world? Like, but like it can certainly influence like the next generation of people, of kids who will one day be running the world. And so that's it.
I love it.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, we're done. I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for all
dinner
your
was great.
thoughts. Yeah, the dinner was great. Where the hell is our food? No, but sincerely, thank you so much, Kristin. Thank you for traveling here. And
Snow.
yeah, in the
Oh,
snow.
Oh yeah, you
of
got
all
the real Chicago
Yeah.
experience.
Of all
That
days
was-
you came during the first snow of the year. And I'm just going to give a quick look and say thank you to Wintrust. They sponsored this episode. So I'm thankful to them. Thank you to Shaw's and Let Us Entertain You for the space. And again, thank you to you all. I hope you gained something from it and
Let's get some
connect
crab
with each
legs
other.
going.
Let's get some
Yeah.
crab legs.
Yeah.
We're staying here and having a party. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Wintrust for presenting this episode. I'm really thankful. And on top of that, I use them for just about everything in my life in banking. I got 2 accounts with them. I have my mortgage, I have my business account. So you should go check them out because it's a great bank and they're a great institution. Thank you for sponsoring us.